Hey, this is author A.L.McCarroll, and I am coming at you from my desk in my room. And this week I will be doing chapter 17, so if you haven't already, go back to the very beginning before you spoil the very end time of this book, since there's only 18 chapters. Go back to the beginning, start at chapter 1, and this part will be where I give a little overview of the previous time's chapter 16. Chapter 16 is an awesome chapter. There's a lot of Avenger stuff in it. It's scary, it's terrifying, and it was kind of more of the climactic part of the book itself. And it calls reference to the title of the book, where Avenger is calling her just another pawn on my board. It was really, really fun to write this. Alright, so what's kind of been going on in my life lately? I watched the first episode of the new Goosebumps show that they have on Hulu. It is amazing. I'm a big Goosebumps fan, always have been ever since I was a kid. I even had a Goosebumps Christmas. I was part of the Goosebumps fan club. I had a huge collection of Goosebumps books, and eventually I ended up giving them all away to a kid that asked for Goosebumps books for Christmas. And it was when I was older and it was harder and harder to find Goosebumps books. I had them, I had enjoyed them, I had read the heck out of them, and they were just kind of sitting around, not being used as much at that point in my life, so I decided that I would send them to this kid's school. And the school had him write me back a thank you note, and I just put that I was like a secret Santa. So it was really cool. And so far our kitten is starting to get a little bit more used to us and a little bit more used to the other big cat Vader that comes in and out. He's the one that was meowing when this started. He's around here somewhere. The kitten, she's getting a little bit better used to us, getting a little bit better used to Vader. She likes to kind of bully Vader. She's this tiny little thing, and she likes to try to jump on him, and he just does his best to be nice. He's a sleepy old man. All he wants to do is take a nap, so a lot of times I'll take him in here with me and let him rest, let her have the other portion of the house to be a little Tasmanian devil kitten in. And yeah. So that's about it for right now. So with that, let's get this thing started. Chapter 17. They all watched as Brett read the eulogy he had written. Captain William Laureate was a man I have always held in high regard. He shaped me into the man I am today. I would have been yet another lost soul without his discipline and guidance. Guinevere sat watching him speak at Laureate's funeral. With her diplomatic connections, they had brought back the bodies of Laureate and Ryle. She still felt immeasurable guilt for taking everyone down to the bunker, killing Fletcher, and only being able to give Robertson and Fletcher's families ashes. Daisy sat next to her, giving and receiving comfort from touch. Daisy held Guinevere's hand as she used a tissue to wipe tears from her blue eyes. Guinevere held back all her tears till night time, when she still had dreamed of all the horrors Avenger had put them through. The first few days back at Gwyntek before the funerals, she couldn't shower without dissolving into heart-racing panic at the hissing sound of the shower head. She kept tormenting herself by thinking back over what Avenger had told her. "You might have been able to destroy me if you had not been so easily influenced." Even though she had seen his ooze go through the portal, she was terrified that he could still influence her actions. "I might come back and move your peace sometime in the future." This is what he had said to her. It seemed like she wouldn't ever be safe from him. Guinevere couldn't stand putting her colleagues and friends in danger again. She had a new plan to resolve her problem and to keep everyone safe, but she knew no one would like it. It didn't matter, though. She was going to do this, no matter what. It would be for the greater good. Guinevere had contacted her parents the day they had returned before the funerals. She ended her call to them curled up on her fold-out bed, body quaking with tears. She had planned on telling Daisy after the funerals, but at that time she couldn't face her best friend with the hard-to-swallow news. Now she had no other option but to tell her. Every moment she spent not enacting this plan was a moment everyone she cared for could be endangered by her presence in their lives. So she wrote Daisy on her comm and asked her to meet her in her office as soon as possible. "You want me to do what?" Daisy looked dumbstruck. "I want you to freeze me in one of your cryopods. I can't be fully trusted. We can wait Avenger out, no matter how long it takes. When we find him again, you can unfreeze me. Then I can have a chance to finally fix this." Daisy looked as if she was going to start crying. "I just lost Brett. Now you want to leave me too. If I freeze you, I'll keep going forward, and you'll effectively stay like you are." "I know, and I'm sorry, but I need you to do this for me, Daisy." She looked her over with pleading resilience. "Damn it, Gwen, don't ask me to do this." Daisy's abrupt anger surprised her. "Daisy, I wouldn't ask you to do this if there were any other options." Daisy glared daggers at her. "What about your parents, Gwen? You know if I freeze you, they will most likely have died when you awaken." Guinevere felt tears well up in her eyes that threatened to spill out as she thought of her conversation with her parents. "Daisy, my mind is made up on this. I've told them, and they're upset. They understand why I have to do this." Daisy turned away from her, taking her time before speaking. "Gwen, it's just not fair. I don't want to lose you." Daisy's voice cracked as she finished speaking and began crying. Guinevere came around in front of Daisy and hugged her. As she did, she felt a lump well up in her throat. Her friend's shuddering sobs sent her over the edge. They both cried in each other's arms. Guinevere filed paperwork to change ownership of the company over to Daisy for the time she would be frozen. She quietly stepped down. She could tell that Daisy was trying to be okay with her decision to go into cryosleep. Guinevere felt guilty for leaving her best friend, but some guilt faded as she watched Daisy and Brett. They loved each other, and seemed to be able to express that love even more after their shared traumatic experience with Avenger. She knew they would find happiness in each other, and that helped strengthen her resolve. Seeing their tender moments brought back her thoughts of Marcus. Guinevere had plans for him and everything she was going to do. Still, if she was honest with herself, she just wanted to see him again, to tell him she was sorry, and resolve some of what happened between them. This time, she personally sent him a message. Doc looked over at the Baron in surprise as he began to pop off the consecutive P words in the song That's Life by Frank Sinatra. Marcus had been playing it over his comm. He smiled at the silly orange-haired man and joined in singing, having fun. The music was interrupted by a message tone. "Damn it, it was just getting good." Marcus smirked at the Baron's over-the-top frustration. It surprised him that the Baron remembered lyrics to the old-world music he played occasionally. He knew it shouldn't, though. The Baron did have perfect memory. He was just more surprised that the Baron seemed to enjoy his music. Marcus passively checked the message, ready to continue his tunes. What he saw made him freeze in place. He blinked a few times, trying not to show any big reaction in front of the Baron and not fully believing his eyes. Finally, Marcus stood up from the black metal desk in the new, fully air-conditioned office they had been renting in the main city of Calera. Ever since he got Gwen's message from the anonymous source, the Baron had been a little easier to suffer, but Marcus knew after that message that he might only need to hold out a little longer. He hadn't wanted to get his hopes up, but he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. This new message devastated all those newfound hopes. Marcus ordered the Baron out of the room, a move he had made before that wouldn't seem too suspicious. Once he was sure the Baron was gone, he locked the door and sat back at the desk, letting his eyes dart over the entire message. Dr. Marcus Silver, it's Guinevere. Things didn't go as planned in our last correspondence. In fact, they went the worst way they could possibly go. I'm making a habit of unintentionally hurting the people closest to me. That's where I come to the point of my message to you. I won't be able to exonerate you. It's for a greater purpose that I would like to be able to detail to you further if you would agree to come back to my office at Gwentech. This had to be a trick. Come back to Gwentech after all these years and everything he had done since? Marcus would be a fool to fall for this. He felt like a fool, too, because he yearned to see her, even after all these years. Even though he had tried to be with other women, those others never lasted more than a few fun nights. Guinevere was, and always had been, the only woman he ever had deep feelings for, and because of those feelings, his heart ached as he read the message over for a third time. He had to be sure it was really her. Guinevere's palm buzzed on her wrist. He had written back. Her heart fluttered as she checked the message. If this is really my Gwen, answer this one question. What song was playing in the background when we first kissed? Guinevere felt her cheeks flush. My Gwen? How bold of him, she thought as she felt her mouth spread into a grin. She thought back to that night. There was a band playing quiet music as they danced. Guinevere wasn't one for memorizing music. What had they played, she questioned herself. She hummed the tune into the info search of her GCOM, which populated with different results. She knew it immediately when she heard it, and sent him the answer. He replied quickly, "When do you need me?" Returning to the familiar city of New York felt like coming home after a long trip. The air smelled cleaner than it ever had on planet Darlene. Marcus sat in the sleek gray ground shuttle. He sprawled out in the comfortable chair, his dingy white lab coat with the torn name tag still proudly sporting the title Doc. He had the road vision off, opting for not having an outside view for this ride. Marcus has thought that getting away from the Baron for a while was exactly what he needed, as he pulled up his white sleeve and passively flipped through his comm. Marcus didn't know exactly what to expect from this visit. After their messages, he was confident it wasn't a trick to detain him. So what did Guinevere want with him? Marcus pulled out his flask and took a sip of whiskey. He'd just have to wait. The shuttle pulled up to the back of the enormous building, and from his window he could see a guard waiting stoically by the door. Unable to see him through the mirrored glass of his shuttle, this man looked familiar. He thought back to the day he had escaped from Gwentech. 2 guards held him while waiting for the authorities to detain him. This was the younger man, the one he had headbutted. He looked like he had aged a decade since he had last seen him. Marcus exited the shuttle and walked up to the door with the fake air of confidence. He scanned the guard to catch his name before meeting his eyes. Captain Blust. So the kid had ranked up. That could be the reason for the change in attitude. He caught Blust's gaze and could see even more evidence in his troubled green eyes that the kid must have gone through something rough. "Dr. Silver, I heard a lot about you from Gwen." Marcus looked at the man suspiciously. He wondered why Bluss spoke so familiarly about her. However, his following statement eased his worries. "I know you're someone important to her. I've heard her talking to my girl Daisy about you." Bluss held open the door for him. "Try not to think too harshly of her, Dr. Silver. We've all been through a lot lately, but I'm sure she'll want to tell you all the details herself." Bluss motioned inward. "Go on. I'm sure you remember where to go. At least some things don't change much." Marcus walked through the familiar halls, passing what used to be his office. His brow furrowed in frustration as he read the new name that had taken his place. Marcus was ambivalent about being back here. He had feelings for Gwen, and wanted to see her again. Still, he felt slighted by her, and held some deep resentment for her not coming out with the truth to clear his name. Marcus needed to hear what she had to say, but he also just wanted to be where she was, no more of her constantly pushing him away. He walked down the hallway that held her office door. He was so close. His breaths became shallow, and his heart beat fast as he approached her door. Guinevere heard the knock. She already knew it was him. She had been alerted that he had arrived. She straightened out her lab coat and breathed in deeply before walking to the door. She opened it and took in the sight of the man standing in front of her. It was strange how someone could look so familiar yet different. He looked less professional, sporting the same long white lab coat he had worn on the days they had worked in the labs. It was now dingy, weathered, and off-white with dust. The patch that used to read Dr. Silver had been torn to only show Doc. Guinevere knew it was the name of his criminal persona. She had kept up with any news she could about him over the years. He went by Doc now, but she could still see the man, Marcus Silver, underneath it all. He had a more mature look to his features that could be due to the slight stubble covering his face, and the dark shade under his blue eyes that had become cold and distant, but still the same beautiful dark shade of blue as the waters on planet Titania. Everyone seems to have been through troubling times lately, Guinevere thought before she spoke. "Marcus, it's been a long time. Come in and have a seat." Marcus couldn't help but be struck by her whenever he was near her. He had wanted to come in strong against her and hold his feelings close to his chest, but instead, the sight of her stirred everything back for him. She looked the same as she always had, but something seemed to be weighing on her. Guinevere had a distant look in her eyes. He walked into the room, noticing how clean it was compared to how it had been before he had left. Marcus took the seat in front of her desk. It felt like old times when they shared coffee alone in this same office room. "It's nice to see you, Gwen." She had taken the seat at her desk and looked over at him as he spoke, worry in her glance. "I wasn't sure how you would feel to see me, Marcus, especially after what I did to you." Damn, he thought, she's getting straight to the point. Marcus tapped his hands on the arms of the chair before answering. "I was furious, Gwen. I hated you for a long time. I was under the impression that you used me and had thrown me away. I want to know what really happened the day you attempted to detain me. I believe I deserve the truth after this long." Guinevere told him about the control Avenger had over her mind, how Avenger had manipulated her into pushing him away, and how he had used her to try to obtain crystals. Marcus listened with a new cold look in his eyes. Guinevere couldn't tell how he felt, and it bothered her. She continued telling him how Avenger had put the idea for the gun in her mind, and she had created it in the hopes of killing him. Guinevere told him how it had backfired, and when she came to the point where he had mocked her and called her his pawn, her voice broke, and she had to hold back the lump in her throat that threatened to overflow from her eyes. Marcus's cool gaze softened, and he looked more like the man she had once known. Marcus put out his hand, palm up, and waited for her to take it. Guinevere had been through so much. He wished he could have been there for her through it all. After all this time, Avenger had been driving a wedge between them. The thought relieved him more than he could even express. Well, that won't ever happen again, Marcus thought to himself. She had said Avenger was gone, so now even if things weren't perfect, he could still try to be here for her. Guinevere looked down at his open hand and then put her hand into his. He could see her cheeks flush as she looked down at their hands. Marcus could tell that every moment like this meant so much to her, and she made him feel the same way. Guinevere thought it needed to be done as she looked down at her hand in his. She needed to tell him everything before she got too caught up in the moments she had left with him. This could make or break any future they might have together, romantically or otherwise. She could only hope he would be okay with everything she would reveal to him. She reluctantly took her hand out of his and fixed him with a serious look. Marcus, you might not like what I will tell you next, but I'll tell you ahead of time that my mind is made up. This is non-negotiable. He put his hand back on the armrest of his chair, and his eyes returned to their cold gaze as she spoke. I'm going through the procedure to freeze myself. That is why I wanted you here today. I wanted to tell you, and I wanted to see you before I undergo the procedure. He looked shocked and was nearly going to say something when she put her hand up and continued. I already told you this is non-negotiable. He looked frustrated at being stopped. Am I allowed to at least ask you why? Yes. You remember testing me before when you thought there was something wrong with me. You were looking for Avenger. He was, he thought, but none of the tests at his disposal had seen any traces of Avenger in her. She continued speaking as he thought. The only way I can be sure not to be used by Avenger again is to eliminate any way he could use me. He told us he was going into the future. This would be the only way to ensure that I'm no longer being used by Avenger. Then I can be ready to fight him again. Gwen, wouldn't that be dangerous? What if something goes wrong? Marcus pleaded with her. My colleague and friend, Dr. Ray, has perfected the cryopod technology. I fully trust her with my life and my company. Marcus was appalled at the idea of Guinevere freezing herself. He didn't want to lose her now that he'd just returned to her life. He fixed his eyes on hers before speaking. Gwen, let me go with you. Let me freeze myself too. He looked deep into her brown eyes, silently pleading with her to say yes. I can't. I still need you. She broke his stare, looking away as she continued. Your part in all of this is just as important as mine. I need you to stay alive and stay on the lookout for Avenger. You've read Robert's journals. You know just as much as I do about Avenger and how he operates. I need you to listen on worlds like Prime and Darlene as you travel. His gaze darkened as he began to take in the meaning of what she intended for him to do. I have heard that you have become somewhat of a known criminal. You will be able to hear things that would never reach mainstream news. I have stepped down from Gwentech and put Daisy in charge. She has agreed to be my eyes and ears on Gaia. If either of you sees or hears any sign of Avenger, then and only then should you unfreeze me, and we can find a way to stop him together. So, he spoke with an affronted tone as he crossed his arms. This is why you won't clear my name. You still want to use me. His words were as icy as his stare. She had known he would disapprove of her plan, but at this late hour it didn't matter. His feelings wouldn't change anything. She would do what she needed to keep him safe from the danger she posed to him. Hey, this is A.L.McCarroll. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Remember to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, also turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. Don't forget to follow me on my social media platforms for updates. You can find the links in the description box. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned and take care.